All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 170. The Ohio State Buckeyes are once again champions. It's been a long 10 years, but we have finally made it. Thank God. Gosh, what a great national championship game. Looked like it was going to be a blowout for a little bit there, and then Notre Dame really found a way to make it competitive, but I am just over the moon, so excited for this team and for just the overall accomplishment. I've been doing so much reflecting. I'm sure I've mentioned many times that my freshman year was the year they won my freshman year at Ohio State was the year that they won the national championship in 2014. So to have this happening right now, a decade later, to see all over social media, all of the students running down High Street and celebrating, and in the Oval and at the stadium, it was really taking me back. I was having a nice little walk down memory lane last night and today, just with how quickly time has gone by, and that it's 10 years later and they were able to do it again. So what a special night for the fans, the students. Like, it's a really cool experience to be a part of something like that. I tweeted this earlier today, but I was like, I think God made me a Buckeye because he had to make up for also making me a Browns fan. And sometimes that's how I feel, because the two experiences of being a fan of those teams could not be more contrasting. Like, I am constantly stressed as a Browns fan and looking at the downside of things, and for the Buckeyes, there's just this ongoing belief in them, and it's just a fun experience to root for them. I had a nice little bet on the game yesterday as well. I bet the spread, which was 8.5, and I think everyone was fingers crossed at the end there who bet the spread with the field goal that Ohio State made there towards the end. Also tied that in with the over 45.5 points, which that was hit a little bit earlier on in the game. Obviously, I just figured Ohio State was going to be able to, if anything, even if Notre Dame couldn't, Ohio State was going to be able to score a decent amount. So feeling good, really hitting my bets. I hit a couple NFL ones this past weekend too. Obviously, got to do some Travis Kelce bets out there. I had some Travis and Kareem yards parlayed together. Got to represent the Cleveland boys. Was hitting some of those as well. We'll get into some NFL talk after we kind of go through all the Ohio State stuff here. But a good weekend of betting in my book, which sometimes I don't talk about on here or get as much into it. But it was a good weekend of betting. I feel good about it. All right, so let's kind of go through just the feelings throughout the game of everything that happened. So obviously that first drive was a little bit nerve-wracking. Riley Leonard running up the middle on like every single play and taking 10 minutes off the clock. That first drive was crazy. The first quarter in general went so fast, which is crazy because that game ended up being extremely long. But the first quarter, it was just, it was practically just that Notre Dame drive, and then, Ohio State had their long-ish drive right after that. So it was interesting to watch them do that. I feel like that was what their game plan was going to be, was to take those, 7-yard chunks down the field, take a lot of time off the clock, and try to control the game by controlling the clock. I think that's what they wanted to do. And after that drive, I was concerned, like, okay, if Ohio State can't get their offense going, Notre Dame might be able to methodically do this throughout the game. Now, I didn't think it was necessarily going to be that sustainable. And if you were on my live stream, I feel like I kept saying this at the beginning, that like the way Riley Leonard was running the ball there, I just didn't know how he was going to be able to continue to keep that up throughout the course of the game. That was going to be a lot on his body, and it's a long night to be able to keep playing like that. So it was a good first drive for them. I just didn't think that they were going to be able to replicate it throughout the night. And then after Ohio State came out there and scored, I was feeling a lot better about things, because I think Ohio State's offense is able to beat them and beat people in so many different ways, whereas Notre Dame needed this perfectly crafted game plan work offensively in order to make things happen. So, you know, felt good at that point, and then things kind of took off from there. It was a couple scores in a row for Ohio State. Notre Dame didn't score again in the first half. And then Notre Dame started chipping away. And this was where I started to get really nervous, because obviously you start going worst case scenario. They get it within 16, which if you score 2 touchdowns and you convert your 2-point conversion on both of those touchdowns, that's a tie game. And you just are like, well, that's a possible scenario. So now I'm freaking out a little bit. You know, and they had some really great moments. Then when they got it within 1 score, that one-handed touchdown catch was an incredible throw and an incredible catch. Hats off to them on that one, because I was just like, how did he bring that ball in? It felt so impossible. So they really obviously got things close there. I felt like offensively, once we were up, we did get a little too soft at times with the play calling. Now, I know you do want to be more conservative when you're up by a lot, because you want to run the ball and try to get as much time off the clock as possible. But, you know, in a championship game, I just don't always want to take those risks of being like, oh yeah, we're comfortably up by X amount, we're good to go, because clearly that was not the case. So that was a little stressful. But the, I think, biggest game-changing play for them towards the end of that game was they had those 2 runs in a row that were Will Howard runs that went absolutely nowhere, and you're like, oh my God, this 3rd down play is going to make or break us, and I hope they're not going to just run the ball again or do something very weak like that. And they didn't. They took that opportunity to throw a bomb to Jeremiah Smith, perfectly placed ball. Jeremiah had tons of separation, was good to go. And then they were all the way down the field, close to be able to score. So that kind of, in a lot of ways, sealed the deal for the game. And, you know, in some ways, I think those 2 runs that they had before that throw were just a way of throwing off Notre Dame and having them give a certain look, a certain coverage out there that maybe they weren't expecting them to go deep on that play like they did. So hats off to, I guess, the play calling in that moment, because it did end up working out very well. You know, there's so many guys I feel like to credit for this game. I do feel like in general, other than a couple of the big plays that were given up, the defense did a really good job. I mean, there's stars all across that defense, and so very proud of them. And offensively, gosh, so many different guys. Judkins, incredible game. He had 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 receiving, 100 total yards rushing, 21 yards receiving. Like, incredible output from him in that game. All the different receivers were getting involved. Jeremiah Smith had 5 receptions for 88 yards. Egbuka had 6 receptions for 64 yards. Tate 2 receptions for 35 yards, and Innis 1 reception for 19 yards. So lots of different pass catchers having opportunities to shine, which I just feel like is nice in these type of games. Like I was kept rooting for like, oh, I want Egbuka to get a touchdown, because I want all of them to be able to have their moment in such an important game. So at least, you know, they had an opportunity, a lot of them, to get some catches in this game and be able to say that they did something like that in a national championship. You know, I want to say maybe the biggest game player, though, would be Will Howard. He was excellent in this game. You know, 17 to 21, so highly accurate. I think in the first half he only had like 1 incompletion, maybe. It was low. Or throughout, like, even going into the 3rd quarter, like he was rolling for a while there. 231 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, which I think was huge. One of my big concerns, and I think most people's concerns going into the day, is Will Howard going to have some of the kind of back-breaking interceptions that he has had throughout the course of his career, moments that can really change games, especially games that end up being close. So that was a concern going into it, and none of that happened. He did a great job protecting the ball, making smart passes. He was extremely accurate, did a great job running the ball as well. He's a big dude, 6'4". I feel like people forget that about him, and so that became really useful when he had to take it himself throughout the entire night. I think this performance is going to do wonders for his draft stock. I think people are going to start having more conversations about his potential in the NFL, and I'm really excited for him for that. I'm interested to see what happens because, throughout the course of the next few months, it's going to be up and down of what people are thinking of the different quarterbacks. So who knows what will happen by the time we get to, April when the draft is here. But for now, I think those conversations are going to ramp up a little bit, and I really think he'll end up being probably a day 2 draft pick. Just overall in these playoffs, I think, look, it was first time in the new format, which is also funny because the first time in this previous format was when they won the national championship. I just think it was awesome that as, a 2-loss team, an 8 seed who wouldn't have been in the previous format, they were able to do this. Probably one of the most impressive 4-game streaks that you could ever see in college sports, because there was never an opportunity before to have a streak of playing highly ranked teams back to back like this. But to beat Tennessee the way they did, dismantle Tennessee the way they did, dismantle Oregon, closer games with Texas and Notre Dame, but still beating those 2 really good teams. So impressive what they were able to do. And to go back to Will Howard, he was excellent throughout, really all of them. Completed 75.2% of his passes for 1,150 yards in those 4 games, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Pretty exceptional when you're playing ranked teams like that. I don't know if I need to apologize to Ryan Day. I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing on social media right now, and I have been certainly critical of him, and I think the criticism was super valid at the time. I do think losing to Michigan every single year is super frustrating and unacceptable. I still believe that. I still really hope that next year that doesn't happen again. But I am proud of him for what he did in these playoffs, the way he was able to get that team to rally around each other and say, we're not going to let the Oregon loss and the Michigan loss in the regular season define who we are as a team. We're going to go out there and show them who we are, and that they were able to overcome all of that and get to this moment, I think is a real testament to how much his players believe in him and believe in each other, and the way he had them ready for this. So hats off to Ryan Day, but I still don't want to lose to that team up north again. Like, we can't keep doing that. And I definitely still feel that way. So I think that's I guess it's a funny conversation that's being had online right now. Ohio State's already the favorite to win the national championship next year. So that's even with all the seniors that they're going to lose, because obviously they had all those guys coming back that they are going to be losing to the draft now. It's pretty interesting that they're already going to be the favorite again, but I guess when you have a program like this, you kind of just keep rallying back and filling out and finding new guys. So that's the name of the game in college football, and it always has been. I feel like the other big topic that has come out of this game is a lot of people being like, Ohio State paid for their roster, and that's the only reason they won. So if you can pay $20 million, like, you can get the best roster in college football too. And I just think that's a little bit ridiculous in general to be saying, yes, Ohio State did have a lot of players get a lot of NIL money. So did a lot of other programs. There's not that many, or there are many other programs that are just below them. Notre Dame hasn't even released their amounts, but when people kind of total up what is believed to be their total spent on NIL, right around that 20 million number as well. Even if it's a little bit lower, okay, so what? Still have to go out there and play all of the games. I think it's disrespectful to the kids on that team and to what they have accomplished to be like, oh yeah, they just paid for it, as if there's not a ton of hard work and things that go into being able to win in these moments. So just wanted to say that, because I feel like I've seen that everywhere of like, oh yeah, you just have to pay for it. Well, there's a lot of teams that paid a lot of money and they didn't do a single thing this season, and they weren't even in the conversation to be in the playoffs. So why didn't they, if they paid for it? Why aren't they in that position? That's all I have to say about that. But congrats to the Buckeyes. Grateful and proud today to be a Buckeye. Seriously, I feel like sometimes being in Cleveland, people get weird about Ohio State. It's like there's a lot of Ohio State fans here, but there's also a lot of Ohio State haters here who are just like annoyed by everyone loving Ohio State and it being kind of a part of Cleveland, even though Ohio State is in Columbus. So I get enjoyment in these moments when I feel like I get to celebrate with my fellow Buckeyes and feel proud of that. I really love that is a fan base I get to be a part of in my life. Okay, so let's talk just briefly a little bit of Cavs here. I don't have a ton to say for the Cavs this episode. Obviously, since I last recorded, they got absolutely crushed by the Thunder. 134 to 114. I don't even think that tells you how big the disparity was throughout that game. Just not a great showing. Legitimately could not make shots, which is, I feel like, a shocking thing to say because they still scored 114. But I mean, if you actually watched the game, that it was a brutal shooting night for the team overall. Which, look, it happens sometimes, and I'm still glad we got to get that one win over the Thunder. And it's a long season, so we have one and they have one, and that is what it is. They just played against the Suns on MLK Day, which I did not really get to watch because they have that classic MLK Day afternoon game usually. When I am working, I do not get MLK Day off. So yeah, they completely manhandled the Suns. It was just absolutely dominant from the little bits I did see. So Cavs are still rolling. We're getting real close here to All-Star time. I believe that the starters are supposed to be announced later this week, and then next week is when the reserves will be announced. So hopefully we'll have that to talk about soon, and hopefully our guys are a part of it. We will see. I posted a little bit of a longer clip on the YouTube channel about my argument for Darius Garland to be an all-star. So definitely go watch that if you need a couple stats and talking points to put out there to your friends who are saying that Darius Garland shouldn't be an all-star. There's a lot of reasons that he should be. Okay, quickly the NFL games from this past weekend as well. So Chiefs versus Texans. Obviously, Chiefs won. Arrowhead Invitational once again. They did not host the conference championship last year. This year they're hosting I don't think they did. They had to go on the road last year. So they will be hosting the conference championships. And I am obviously looking forward to a rematch of Chiefs-Bills because of, the past years of hatred that those teams have for each other. To talk about Chiefs-Texans quickly, though, I think the big talking point that came from this game was the complaining about the officiating. And look, I have 100% in my past and still in present will complain and will continue to complain about officiating in games. It's like our God-given right as fans of sports teams that we get to complain about officiating, and that's just kind of the way it goes. What I didn't like was seeing the way all of the Texans players and the Texans coaches after the game were very openly complaining about the officiating to a ridiculous point. CJ Stroud, D'Amico, everyone being like, we knew coming into this game that the refs were going to be against us, so we were going to have to beat the refs and we were going to have to beat the Chiefs, and just whining and complaining, saying like, we already knew that. That is so ridiculous to me that that's what you're using your time after the game to do, is to complain about the officiating repeatedly, even saying that you knew before the game even started, just feeding into this narrative that the refs only give the Chiefs calls. Look, the Chiefs get calls because they're always in the playoffs. They're always in these big game situations. And so they are in the position and have the opportunity for sometimes these calls to go their way. Maybe your team or some other random team who's sitting on the couch right now would be also getting those calls if they were in the playoffs every single year. So I think it's a little bit ridiculous for people to, not just people, I get fans are going to do it, for players and coaches to be feeding into this narrative. I think that's ridiculous, and it's just not a good look overall. After the game, in order to bring your team together, I think you should be taking accountability, and you should be saying, like, we could have done better. There were things that we did wrong in this game. The Texans kicker missed like 1,000,000 times throughout the game. There were a lot of things that the Texans did wrong. And look, they didn't get stops when they needed to against the Chiefs. Travis Kelce was running all over them. I mean, running as slow as he could, but once he was getting those, he was getting open and he was getting those catches. And it wasn't getting much after, but the Chiefs defense was incredible. Like, they played the better game. The better team won that game. So I feel like they need to do some self-reflection in that moment and realize, like, hey, we have to own this. I mean, even after the Lions loss, which was a crazy upset to see, Dan Campbell was like, it was me, it was my fault. And that's really all he could say. He was very emotional post-game, but just really taking it on the chest. And I respect that. I think that's what you should be doing as a coach. I don't think you should be up there blaming external factors that, you know, your team can't control about what happened, especially like when you weren't the better team. Like the Texans were not the better team in that game. And it wasn't just one play that decided that game. So just thought that was a little ridiculous. Bills Ravens was probably my favorite game of the weekend. Tough day to be Mark Andrews. First of all, always love to see an AFC North team lose, so I'm very happy about that. But yeah, tough day to be Mark Andrews with the fumble and then the drop on the 2-point conversion. Just, yeah, absolutely brutal. But like I said, I am happy the Bills won because I appreciate a good rivalry, and I'm looking forward to Bills Chiefs. I think it's going to be a fun game. I'm very excited about it. So we will have to see what happens this coming weekend. It's really, we have two weekends left of football, which is so sad. But we'll have the Cavs to keep us going. So at least we have that. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. Want to thank everyone who's joined my live streams on YouTube in the last few weeks. Please continue to join them. I have a great time doing them. And also please subscribe on the YouTube if you're joining. Would very much appreciate that. Leave comments. We'll chat on them, or leave comments on any other videos. If you listen on Apple or Spotify, please subscribe there, leave a rating or review, share with a friend, share the YouTube with a friend. All of that stuff means a lot to me. So thank you guys so much for listening. And even though didn't even talk about them today, so we're not going to give a Go Browns. We're today going to give a Go Bucks. Thanks for listening.